Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. Have you ever had one of those days? One of those days when you woke up, the sun was already shining through your windows, sweeping gold, warm beams across your floor, and the day stretched out before you, full of undiscovered potential, adventures. And suddenly your soul was full of optimism and excitement. So you decide to hop in the car and head up the coast, or maybe take a left out to the desert. And you need the perfect album for a day like this, don't you? So you turn on and you turn up Astrid Young's One Night at Giant Rock. One Night at Giant Rock is the album for days like those. It will sharpen the colors, it heightens your senses, and it will take you on a ride as the cool air blows in and the landscape changes with the tracks. This album made me want to splash in a puddle, to sit on the beach, to watch the fog roll in, to toast a good friend, to be moody, melancholy, to love someone, and to live. Her name is Astrid Young, and she is my special guest today. Her discography began in 1984. She's been playing music for a long time. She has appeared on over 40 releases, playing, singing, and wowing us. She plays the piano, the bass, and the 12-string guitar. Welcome, Astrid.
Hey, Jeremiah, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you here.
That was
So,
quite an intro.
well, that's how it made me feel, and we'll
Yeah.
get more into that as we talk about the layers of this album and the music and the incredible crew that and team that you have of musicians. Um, it's really a full album.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You
a ride for sure.
Yeah, and it makes you want to take a ride. I mean, it made me want to like get out of the house and take a road trip,
That's
and
so
just
cool.
like look, the day spreads out before you and there's adventure and the wind. You said about One Night at Giant Rock that there aren't many records being made like this today. And truthfully, the returns are not often worth the money that you put into it as an artist. But when you consider that the result and the enduring pleasure it gives to the listener, shouldn't it be worth making? I certainly think so. So I completely agreed with you on that statement, Astrid. There are not many quality albums like yours being made these days. Again, the album that we're talking about is One Night at Giant Rock, and it's so full, it's literally overflowing with sound. First, I wanted to ask you what led to reimagining the original album, One Night at Giant Rock, and adding seven more songs.
Good question. So, my co-conspirator and the person that co-produced the record with me, Victor DiLorenzo, uh, we always had an intention to make a vinyl edition of the record. But when it was all said and done, and after we had released the CD, we realized that we were about maybe 2, 3 minutes too long for a single vinyl. And at the time we were saying, well, maybe we should just, record some more songs and make it a double vinyl, or maybe we should edit it, and I was kind of against it at the time because we'd put a lot of work into the sequencing and making it so it's just like one whole thing as opposed to just a bunch of songs thrown on a disc, like a lot of records seem to be. I'm a big fan of the art form of the album. It's something that it's psychological, it's emotional, all those things. So that was the idea behind making the record in the beginning. But anyway, so the idea to make the double vinyl, it kind of lingered with us for a little while, but then it never really happened. And I was doing other things, and Victor was doing other things, and then COVID hit, and time went on and on and on. And then I had become, in the meantime, acquainted with a guy named Eddie Kramer, who is, you probably know who he is. He's made some of my favorite records in the world. And interestingly enough, I ran into him at the grocery store, and we're in the self-checkout line, and we're just chatting for a little bit, and then I turned around and walked out, and then just before I walked out the door, I turned around and I said, "Hey, Eddie," I said, "I've been thinking about extending, recording a few more songs and doing a new edition of my last record. Would you like to be involved in that?" And he's like, "Yes, I can't believe you asked me. I'm so excited to do this, So it's like with that, we proceeded, and about a month later started recording Lay Me Down. And then later, we made some arrangements to bring the band up and track some new songs. And so we tracked, including Lay Me Down, we tracked 7 songs.
Mm.
And but then in the meantime, we decided that we were, I told you the story earlier, but we decided we were going to make it 2 records instead of 1. Not, for various different reasons. I won't get into all the details, but what it boils down to is that the One Night at Giant Rock album, I removed 1 song from it. So with the sequence that is on the CD and on all the streaming platforms, that's going to stay like that. The album is sequenced a little bit differently, and 1 song is removed. I'm not going to tell you which one, but it's going to end up on a B-side with one of the new songs. It's actually going to be the B-side to the A-side is going to be called, a song called Venison Tonight, which is on the new record. And my brother actually plays a harmonica solo on that song, so that's going to be pretty cool. And so the LP version of One Night at Giant Rock plus a 7-inch single with Lay Me Down on the A side, Patchouli Boy on the B side is going to be out. I think I should have them in hand by mid-May, something like that. So
Nice.
soon.
Something to look forward to in May.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really
You
excited. We
brought
just
up
mastered this week.
you just did what this week?
We just mastered this week, so
Oh,
yeah.
that's gotta be satisfying.
Yeah, it was. And
Experience.
it's funny because I haven't mastered for vinyl in a long time, and of course I use the same mastering engineer as I did for One Night at Giant Rock. So it was very inconsequential. I mean, I went in, I had the whole day booked, right? And I went in at noon, and I think we were done by like 1 o'clock, and then we sat around and talked for 2 hours. It's really all they do. And this is interesting because I was curious as to like what's different. How do you master vinyl differently than you do for digital? But apparently for digital production, everything needs to be so loud, right? In vinyl, it doesn't have to be quite as loud. And so if you bring it down a couple of dBs, then the limiters don't kick in. So you get a much wider range of sound, dynamic range, right? Which is
That's interesting.
interesting. That's a
You,
simplified version of it, but that's how I understood it. Mhm.
you made me think about this. You said you guys talked for a couple hours after, and
Yeah.
when you get to know an engineer or you get to know the people that are working on mastering your album or engineering or producing your album, do you find that if you get to know them, that translates to them knowing you and how they produce your work and produce your sound, the sound that you're going for?
Oh,
Do you find that
absolutely.
that that
Absolutely.
that
And for
relationship
me,
is
it's
important?
it's particularly important because I have pretty profound hearing loss. And it took me a while to actually complete the One Night at Giant Rock record because even though I'd started working on a few songs, because of my hearing loss, I couldn't be trusted to to mix anything. And I really didn't have much of a reference. I have no high end, even though I have hearing aids, everything sounds like crap. So it took me a while to find people that I really trusted.
Mm.
And, when you make a record with somebody or you spend any amount of time in the studio with somebody, you get to know each other on an intrinsic level. It's kind of a nerdy musician thing, I guess, but it's almost like an extended family in a sense, you shared something. It's like it's a relationship. Definitely. So people like that, like Joe Carvalho, who is my mastering engineer, and all the guys in my band and all the engineers that I work with, they're like family to me.
Yeah, it's almost like to borrow. I'm in hospitality, a hospitality
Yeah,
equivalent, like a chef and his sous chef and the
yeah.
line cooks, right? Like they to make that great dish, they've got to all work together and understand each other.
Yeah,
Um,
with music, there's not usually any throwing of hot pans so.
yes, Astrid. You brought up something earlier that we went past quickly, but that the album was one song too many for a vinyl, which made me
Mhm.
think I never thought about that. How many songs can you put on vinyl, or how many
It's
minutes of listening?
Well, it really it depends on a lot of things. If your music's really bass heavy, you don't want a crowd that like you have like a maximum amount of spacing. You probably put about 23 minutes aside if it's very light and it doesn't have a lot of bass in it, right? But if it's really heavy music, it's got a lot of bass in it. Not that mine does, but the more you squish onto a disc, the lower the quality is going to be. So you want to be able to give
Interesting.
it enough room to for the grooves, right?
To breathe and live
Yeah,
and expand. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So I mean, I could have squished it on there. I could have found a way, but it just the quality wouldn't be as good. And I think that the whole point of actually producing something on vinyl is that you're doing it to maintain a certain level of quality. And as my brother likes to say, quality whether you want it or not.
That was actually one of my questions. I was going to see what's that mean to you. But before we before you answer that, I think you just answered that. One Night at Giant Rock. To me, it's an amazing title because it makes me wonder. First of all, wonder
Mhm.
what is Giant Rock? Where is the Giant Rock? What happened to Giant Rock? What was the night like?
Oh,
I start thinking all these things. I think it's just a great title. Um, is there an origin or a
oh
meaning
yeah.
behind
Oh, absolutely.
the
Okay,
title?
so the title of the record was actually supposed to be Integratron, and you're in California. I don't know if you've been out to Joshua Tree or Landers or that area, but there's a this kind of weird structure out there called the Integratron. Are you hip to the Integratron?
I don't know the
Okay.
Integratron. I know Joshua Tree
All
and the
right. So
distance. Yeah.
it's nearby there. Anyway, it kind of looks like this silo. And it was built by a guy named George Van Tassel back in the 50s who claimed he was taken aboard UFOs and they gave him the plans to make this thing. And it was supposed to be for human cell rejuvenation and time travel. So he built this thing, but before he actually completed it, he died under very mysterious circumstances. So it's been sitting out there. Now it's on government land, so nobody can actually own it, but people do have leaseholds over, they'll lease it for 50 years or whatever. And at the time when I was living out in Southern California, I had a couple of horses that I was keeping near there. And, there's a lot of X-Files, UFO kind of legendary things around there. So the Integratron was kind of like this woo-woo place, and not far away, like maybe about 2 miles up the road, is Giant Rock. And Giant Rock is this big boulder out in the middle of this desert plain. And there used to be an airstrip out there. And back in I think the 60s, there was a little restaurant out there, and Howard Hughes used to fly in and have pie at the restaurant. And there was this dude that lived under the rock, and they used to have UFO conventions out there all the time, and so pretty legendary. So anyway, I have a song on the record called Integratron, and I wanted to call the record Integratron. So there's two women that run the Integratron now, and they do sound baths, and it's very corporate, very
Mhm.
organized, and everything like that. But so I figured just out of courtesy, I was going to say, "Do you mind if I'm going to call my record Integratron? Is that okay?" But apparently, they have music CDs that they do,
Wow.
and their lawyers basically said there's no way she can call the record Integratron. And they're very nice about it, and they actually said that they had to say no to Robert Plant too. So I figured I was
Those lawyers got to ruin everything.
but then I back in a position of okay, and now I have to figure out something else to call the record. So two things here. I do have a song called One Night at Giant Rock. It's not on that record, believe it or not. But also in the song Integratron, there's a line in it that says One Night at the Giant Rock. And so I thought, in One Night at Giant Rock, the song was actually supposed to be on that record, but it just didn't make it to the record. We had started recording it, then we never finished it. It's on the new record though. So anyway, I just thought that was a no-brainer. I'll call it One Night at Giant Rock. But
Well,
it's kind of like long, convoluted, almost Spinal Tap, like story behind
yeah.
why the record, why that song, why it's called that, and why that song isn't on the record. But it'll be on
Well,
the
you
next.
know what? You got my vote. I love the title that you came
Oh,
up with.
thank you.
So that's I think that's a better one in my opinion, my humble opinion.
Mhm.
Um, what makes the album so special to you aside from, because we are going to talk about the great musicians and the producers and the people that you have involved in the album, but what makes this album so special to you and personal to you?
This particular record or an
Yeah,
album in
yeah, it does.
general? Okay,
The
well,
one
this,
night at Giant Rock.
yeah, it was, um, well, I had just kind of come out of a really dark period in my life. I had lost both my parents in 2005, and a lot of those songs kind of came out of, I was living back in Canada. I really missed the desert. I really have a heartfelt, very deep connection to the desert in Southern California. And so it was kind of my love letter to the desert in a lot of ways, and a lot of the imagery in some of the songs are kind of based on things that I saw out in the desert or things that happened or things that I felt, things like that. So to me, it's got that atmosphere, right? And then I was looking for photography to of the desert, without actually having to go there and take the pictures myself. And I came across this guy is a retired, he's an Army veteran, a U.S. Army veteran, and he lived out near Joshua Tree at the time. And his hobby was going out and taking these gorgeous pictures of the desert. And it absolutely captured the vibe, the feeling, everything. You could tell that he loved the desert as much as I did. So still to this day, I've never met him in person, but he was just thrilled to let me use his photographs. And so that's the artwork that's on the record. This kind of completes the picture. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Really love this album. We're about to take a break here, and we're going to listen to a little bit. I'm going to share it with the listeners.
Cool.
But before we do, you've described what you were going through with this album, why it was special to you, but you've also been quoted as saying, know my music and you'll know me. And so, what do you think this album says about you that a listener might pick up on or might not have known before?
Well, I think that a lot of people, whether they know me from, just the session work that I've done, or, if they know me from my metal days. I was in a hair band on the Sunset Strip in the 80s. And
Is that how you hurt your hearing?
no, 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 that I blame that on Steve Cropper, actually. Um, yeah, Steve Cropper for this one, Booker T for that one, you know. Go figure.
That's funny.
I can't even blame my brother for that. I blame him. Um, uh, but I mean, I have a background in heavy rock and stuff like that. So I think anybody that kind of knew me back in the day would be really, really surprised at this. Not to say that, but I like all kinds of stuff, and I mean, I was classically trained. I love Kate Bush. I love Black Sabbath. I love a lot of the Russian composers. So I think there's a lot of those influences in there. So it's kind of a surprising piece of work. It's not, like I said, it's not just a bunch of songs on a disc. It's
Hmm.
it's a story, it's a journey,
It
it's a
is.
feeling, and I think that, one of the things that I've been able to learn over the course of my musical career and spending as much time in studios that I have is I can get what's in my head onto a medium. I can translate that to other people, and I think I've really successfully done that with this. So it really, I'm very proud of it. I think it's one of the best things that I've done, and the opportunity to work with Victor DiLorenzo, I was a big Violent Femmes fan,
Hmm.
back in the day, and honestly, if somebody had told me back in 1981 that, oh yeah, you're gonna get to work with this guy, I would have said, yeah, right. That would have been the farthest thing from my mind, but we have a real incredible musical chemistry, and it's the first time I've actually let anybody produce me. Like just given up all control.
Control.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
he got
interesting.
me
So
to
you,
do things that I never would have done. And I actually, even the engineer in the studio at the time, Travis, after the first couple of days, he says to me, he says, I just want you to know I can see what's going on in your head. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, Victor asked you to do something, and I can see you just like fighting not to say fuck off, or whatever. Sorry, bleep that out. But
did you, did you,
but then
did
you
you
just take
like
a
giving
deep
up
back
that
breath and
control?
you do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting that you fought that and that you fight that and that you got that much control. But obviously you can see the talent and the what you produce. I can see where that comes from. You want it right. You want to do it right.
Mhm.
And but did you enjoy in the end after it was over, after you went through that metamorphosis and kind of gave up control? You liked the end result. Did
I
you
love
like
it.
that process? Yeah.
It's so
Well,
freeing. It's so incredibly freeing. And especially comes back to this like circle of trust of the people that you're working with. And it's almost like you leave any of your preconceived notions at the door, outside the studio door, and you walk in there and it's just like, okay, let's just be
just
whatever this needs to be. And working with Eddie Kramer too, I mean, that was another revelation, because everything that he does is in service to the song.
mm,
And whereas I would I often let things go by in the name of, oh, a little bit of imperfection is okay. He hears things that just, it's like, wow, I never would have bothered with that.
special
Okay.
a special kind of magic that
Yeah.
some of those guys have, right? That's just amazing to be a part of and be aware of. Okay, so we're gonna take when I came in the show, I played a little bit of Try This. I
Yeah.
really liked the end there, so I brought us in with that. When we're going out right now to our break, and we'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. We're gonna listen to Why Run When You Can Hide. Such a great title. Um, anything you want to say about this before I take us to
No,
break?
no. Let her
Okay.
rip.
Yeah, just listen. Yeah, turn it up.
Yeah.
Astrid Young rocks. Astrid Young is a singer and songwriter pianist. She plays bass and the 12-string guitar. The new release of the vinyl edition of One Night at Giant Rock is coming soon this spring, maybe even May. The album is a love letter to the desert and all its magic. This is an album of uncompromising quality, an audiophile vinyl package complete with art and photography, with remixes, behind the scenes content, and live shows featuring all the amazing musicians who played on the past and the present versions of the record. So can we pre-order this, or do we just have to all be
Yeah.
patient?
Yeah, you
We can
can
pre-order it?
actually. I have a crowdfunding page, astridyoung.rocks, and there's a bunch of pre-order packages on there. You can even order
Okay, great.
a virtual house concert if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on there.
Mm.
And you can get there too, but it's Astrid Young Rocks, right? .net.
Astridyoung.rocks.
Rocks. And
Yeah.
then there's also astridyoung.net, and that takes
Yeah.
you there as well. I got
Which
that.
is just the
Uh,
general site. It's got everything on it. And the great thing at astridyoung.net, if you go to astridyoung.net, under the works tab, there is a page with all the liner notes for every song on One
mhm.
Night at Giant Rock. So it's got all the lyrics and little notes on the sessions and kind of funny little anecdotes and things like that, if you're interested in knowing the stories behind the songs. Mhm.
Yeah, you definitely go down the rabbit hole with that one. That's the
Mhm.
best thing about vinyl records, right? Is the days when you could just open them up and sit on your floor while you listen to the album and just read and look
Oh,
through
yeah.
everything and
I
just
know.
listen
Didn't
to
we
the
all?
smell. Yeah. For inquiries, for bookings, all that info at astridyoung.net. Again, go to her website, astridyoung.net, and find all the good stuff we're talking about. And on Instagram at Wanda Plez. It's WandaPlez. Here is, I've talked enough. Let's go to the music. Why run when you can hide? We'll be right back.